Sophia Carter ran like she was chasing something bigger than the finish line. Every race, every sprint, every aching muscle pushed her closer to the future she had worked for. At Westwood High, she was a name everyone knew, a rising star, a champion in the making. Her speed, her determination, everything about her screamed success. College scouts were watching, and a full-ride scholarship to Columbia felt almost certain. Her parents, David and Olivia Carter, had supported her every step. Early morning practices, late-night training, endless sacrifices, they believed in her more than anyone. And then there was Ethan Parker, the school's top soccer player, her biggest fan, and the boy everyone thought she would take on the world with. Together, they were unstoppable. Sophia had it all. A promising future, a loving family, a perfect relationship. But life didn't care about perfect plans. One unexpected moment was about to change everything. Sophia had never known a life without pressure. Every morning, before the sun even rose, she was on the track. Faster, stronger, better. That was the only thing her coach, Coach Reynolds, ever demanded. His voice echoed in her head long after practice was over. You want that scholarship? Push harder. Champions don't get tired. Again. She knew he meant well. He saw her potential, just like everyone else did. But potential wasn't enough. She had to prove herself every single day. At home, the pressure didn't ease. Her parents had poured everything into her career. They weren't just proud, they were invested. David Carter, once an athlete himself, always reminded her that she had what it took to go pro. You're not just good, Sophia. You could be great. Don't waste it. She wanted to make them proud. She wanted to be the best. But some nights, when she lay in bed, exhausted to her core, she wondered if she even had a choice. What would happen if she slowed down? If she said, I need a break? She wasn't sure, and that scared her. So she didn't stop. She ran, because running was the only thing she knew how to do. The night had been perfect. Westwood High had just won the regional championship, and the whole team was celebrating. The air buzzed with excitement. Cheers, music, laughter. Sophia felt unstoppable, like she was on top of the world. Ethan was right there with her, his arm around her waist, his smile just as bright. They had earned this moment. After the party, it was just the two of them. The adrenaline, the joy, the feeling of being young and invincible, it all blurred together. One thing led to another. Sophia didn't overthink it. They had been together for a while. They loved each other. It felt natural. By the next morning, life moved on like nothing had changed. Training resumed. School continued. The pressure of winning, of being the best, still loomed over her. She didn't dwell on that night. It wasn't a big deal, or so she thought. Because in just a few weeks, Sophia Carter, Westwood's golden girl, the track star with the world at her feet, would realize that one night was enough to change everything. Sophia was used to exhaustion. Training was brutal, and pushing past her limits was nothing new. But this was different. It started on the track. She was mid-sprint, feet pounding against the ground, when suddenly the world tilted. Her vision blurred for half a second. Her stomach twisted. She stumbled. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle. Carter, focus. Again. She shook it off, forcing herself forward. Maybe she hadn't eaten enough. Maybe she just needed more water, more sleep, more something. But then came the mornings. She would wake up feeling like her stomach was turning inside out. Cold sweats, nausea, a deep, draining fatigue that no amount of rest could fix. At first, she blamed the stress. Training, school, the pressure of living up to expectations, it all weighed on her. But then Emma noticed. Hey, are you okay? Emma asked one afternoon as they walked to class. I'm fine, Sophia answered too quickly, adjusting the straps of her backpack. Emma narrowed her eyes. Soph, you don't look fine. You've been off lately. You're pale, you look exhausted, and don't even try lying. I saw you nearly pass out on the track yesterday. Sophia sighed, rubbing her temple. Emma was right. I don't know, she admitted. I've just been feeling weird, dizzy, tired, and I can't eat in the mornings without feeling sick. Emma stopped walking. Sophia turned to face her, confused, until she saw the look on Emma's face. A slow, uneasy realization settled between them. You don't think. Emma hesitated, lowering her voice. Sophia, when was your last period? Sophia froze. Her heartbeat hammered in her chest. Her last period? Her mind raced, scrambling through the past weeks, the past months. And then, for the first time, the thought hit her. It couldn't be, could it? Sophia's hands felt ice cold. Her last period? She did the math in her head, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. 1 month, then another, over 2 months. Her chest tightened. That wasn't possible. It had to be stress, training, diet, overworking her body. That happened to athletes, right? Right? But something in her gut told her otherwise. A deep, gnawing feeling she couldn't shake. All day, she tried to ignore it. She went through the motions. Classes, practice, dinner with her parents, pretending everything was fine. But the thought followed her like a shadow. That night, long after her parents had gone to bed, Sophia slipped out of the house. She pulled up the hood of her sweatshirt, hands stuffed in her pockets as she walked to the nearest drugstore. The bright fluorescent lights felt too harsh, the aisles too empty. She moved quickly, avoiding eye contact, grabbing a box from the shelf, and heading straight for self-checkout. Her heart pounded as she paid. As she walked home, she gripped the bag so tightly her fingers ached. This was ridiculous. She was overreacting. She would take the test, see the negative result, and laugh at how paranoid she had been. That's what would happen. That's what had to happen. Sophia locked the bathroom door and stared at the box in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, pulled out the test, and followed the instructions. It was simple. Just wait a few minutes. She didn't need a few minutes. The second line appeared almost instantly. 2 red lines. Clear, bold, undeniable. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Her whole body went numb. No, this wasn't happening. She grabbed the test, shaking it as if she could erase the result. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Her vision blurred, her stomach twisted. Her legs felt weak, and she sank to the floor, clutching the test in her hands. Her life, her future, had just been rewritten in a single moment, and she had no idea what to do next. Sophia had never been this nervous in her life. She sat on a bench behind the school, her hands clenched into fists on her lap. The small plastic test felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her pocket. Ethan was late. Her foot tapped restlessly against the pavement. Every second that passed made her stomach twist tighter. She had rehearsed this moment over and over in her head, but now that it was real, she had no idea how to start. Finally, Ethan appeared, still wearing his soccer gear, wiping sweat from his forehead. He grinned at her, completely unaware. "Hey, what's up?" he asked, plopping down beside her. Sophia didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat felt dry, her heart slamming against her ribs. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the test. Ethan frowned. "What's that?" She placed it in his hands. He looked down, and everything changed. His smile vanished. Color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sophia braced herself, gripping the bench so tightly her knuckles turned white. Finally, Ethan whispered the only word that came to his mind. "No." Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the test. His breath came out short and uneven, like he'd just been punched in the gut. "No," he muttered again, shaking his head. This isn't real." Sophia swallowed hard. "It's real, Ethan." His eyes darted to hers, filled with something she didn't expect, fear. "This can't be happening," he whispered. Then, louder, "It's not my problem." Sophia flinched like she had been slapped. "What?" Ethan stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. He was panicking. She could see it all over his face. The same guy who never got nervous before a big game was now coming undone right in front of her. "We were careful, right? Maybe it's wrong," he said, pacing. "You should take another one." "I took 3, Sophia said, voice barely above a whisper. Ethan let out a sharp breath, stepping back as if the truth was something he could physically escape. "I can't do this," he muttered. Sophia stood up, desperation creeping into her voice. "Ethan, please." But he was already walking away. She watched the one person she thought she could count on disappear without looking back. And for the first time, she realized she was completely alone. Sophia stood frozen, watching Ethan walk away. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred, and before she could stop it, the first sob escaped her lips. She sank onto the bench, her body trembling. The pregnancy test slipped from her fingers, landing on the pavement with a dull tap. He left, just like that. The boy she trusted, the one who promised to always be there, had turned his back on her when she needed him the most. She hugged herself, gasping for air between sobs, but no amount of breathing could erase the ache crushing her chest. For the first time, reality sank in. No one was coming to save her. No one was going to fix this. She was truly alone. Sophia had always been the strongest on the track, the one who never showed weakness, never let exhaustion slow her down. But now, every step felt heavier, every sprint more difficult. It happened again during practice. She was mid-run, pushing through the final stretch when the dizziness hit her like a wave. Her vision blurred, her balance wavered, and for a split second, she thought she was going to collapse. She managed to steady herself just in time, but not before her teammates noticed. "Did you see that?" one girl whispered. "She almost fell," another muttered. Sophia ignored them, forcing herself forward, but she could feel their eyes on her. Watching. Questioning. By the next day, the whispers had spread beyond the track. "She looks awful lately. I heard she's been skipping meals. Maybe she's sick?" The rumors followed her everywhere, in the hallways, in the locker room, at lunch. And then it got worse. Sophia was sitting in history class, trying to take notes when the nausea hit, fast and brutal. Her head spun, her stomach clenched, and suddenly the world tilted sideways. The next thing she knew, she was on the floor. Gasps filled the room. "Somebody get the nurse," a voice called. Everything around her was a blur. Hands lifted her, voices buzzed in her ears. She was too weak to fight it anymore. The secret she had tried so hard to hide, it wasn't staying hidden much longer. Sophia's eyes fluttered open to the harsh glare of the nurse's office lights. Her head throbbed, her body felt heavy. But before she could even process where she was, she heard it. The whispers. Outside the small room, voices murmured in hushed excitement. "Did you hear? She passed out in class. I heard it's because she's pregnant." Her stomach twisted. The door creaked open and the school nurse walked in, clipboard in hand. "You gave us a scare, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Sophia swallowed hard. Exposed, vulnerable, terrified. She forced a nod. Better. But it didn't matter what she said. It was too late. By the time she left the office, the damage was done. Everywhere she walked, eyes followed. Conversations stopped the moment she got close. People weren't just whispering anymore, they were staring. She heard it in the cafeteria. She heard it in the hallways. She even heard it in the locker room. Sophia Carter? No way. The track star? Pregnant? Guess she won't be running anymore. It spread like wildfire, and no matter how fast she had once been, there was no outrunning this. Sophia had always been used to attention. People cheering her on, coaches praising her, classmates admiring her talent, but now the looks were different. Colder, crueler. She walked down the hall, gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. The whispers weren't just whispers anymore. They were taunts. "Well, there goes her scholarship. Guess she won't be breaking any records, except for being the youngest mom in school." The track star turned baby mama. What a joke. Laughter followed her wherever she went. Fake pity, judging stares, smirks. Someone snickered behind her. What's next? A baby shower in the locker room. Sophia kept her head down, kept walking. Every step felt heavier, every word cut deeper. She had spent years proving herself, showing the world she was more than just a high school athlete. But now, in their eyes, she was nothing more than a mistake. Sophia had imagined this moment 100 different ways, but nothing could prepare her for actually saying the words. She sat at the dinner table, barely touching her food. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure her parents could hear it. Across from her, David and Sophia Carter talked about their day like everything was normal, like their daughter's world wasn't falling apart. She gripped her fork, her knuckles white. Just say it. Get it over with. But the words stuck in her throat like stone. It wasn't until Olivia glanced at her plate and frowned that Sophia knew she had run out of time. "You're barely eating, honey? Are you feeling okay?" Her stomach twisted. No more hiding. I'm pregnant. Silence. The clatter of a fork hitting a plate. Her mother's breath caught. Her father's face went pale. For a moment, no one moved. Then David pushed back his chair, standing so fast it scraped against the floor. You're joking. His voice was sharp, disbelieving. Sophia shook her head. No. The air in the room changed. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth, eyes glistening. David's fist clenched at his sides. How could you let this happen, Sophia? His voice was tight with anger, with disappointment. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to? His voice rose, and Olivia flinched. Do you have any idea what this means? Your future, your career? You've thrown everything away. Sophia blinked, and a tear slid down her cheek. I know, but I can't change it. David turned away, his jaw tight, refusing to look at her, and that hurt the most. Sophia felt her mother's arms around her before she even realized Olivia had moved. Oh, sweetheart. Olivia's voice was thick with tears, pain, fear. Sophia collapsed into her mother's embrace, sobs shaking her shoulders. David said nothing. He just stood there, staring at the floor, while his daughter's world crumbled in front of him. The silence in the Carter household was thick and suffocating. For days, David barely spoke. He went through the motions, work, dinner, bed, without looking Sophia in the eyes. Olivia, though heartbroken, tried to be strong for both of them. Sophia had never felt more alone. Then one evening, as she sat curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. David stood there, arms crossed, face unreadable. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he sighed and sat beside her. You're scared, he said, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. Sophia swallowed, nodded. So are we, he admitted. Your mom and I, we never expected this. Her throat tightened. I didn't either. David let out another breath, running a hand over his face. You made a mistake, he said, his tone serious but no longer angry. And I'm not going to lie, this won't be easy. But he paused, meeting her eyes. We're not abandoning you, Sophia. Tears burned her eyes. You're our daughter, Olivia added, sitting beside her. And no matter what, we'll figure this out, together. Sophia broke down, tears streaming freely. For the first time since she saw those two red lines, she didn't feel alone. Walking into Westwood High felt different now. The same hallways she had once dominated with confidence now felt smaller, suffocating. Whispers followed her like shadows, low enough to pretend she couldn't hear them, loud enough to make sure she did. That's her. I heard she's keeping it. Wonder how long she'll last before she drops out. Sophia kept walking. She kept her chin up, eyes forward, like nothing had changed. But it had. People she had once called friends avoided her gaze. Teachers gave her looks of pity. Even her teammates, girls who had once cheered her victories, now acted like she wasn't even there. At lunch, she sat alone. The same perfectly balanced meal she used to fuel her body now made her stomach churn. Still, she showed up. Every class, every assignment. When someone whispered too loudly, she forced herself to ignore it. When someone stared too long, she stared right back. Emma was the only one who didn't treat her like a cautionary tale. One afternoon, as they walked to class, Emma nudged her. You know they're all just waiting for you to break, right? Sophia tightened her grip on her books. Let them wait. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much. This was her life, and she wasn't going to let the whispers define her. Sophia sat in Coach Reynolds' office, her hands clenched in her lap. She already knew what he was going to say. She just didn't want to hear it. He sighed, leaning forward. Sophia, you know how much I respect you. You've been one of the best athletes this school has ever seen. Her heart hammered, past tense. Have been. But, he hesitated. With your situation, the board has decided you won't be able to compete for the rest of the season. The words hit her like a slap. No, it came out sharper than she intended. Coach, please, just let me run. I can still do this. His face softened, but his words didn't. Sophia, you and I both know that's not true. She opened her mouth to argue, but he continued. Columbia called. His voice was gentle, careful. They're withdrawing your scholarship offer. Everything inside her collapsed. The future she had worked for, bled for, lived for, gone. She sat frozen, staring at the desk, the trophies lined up on the shelves. Coach Reynolds sighed. I know this isn't fair, but you're strong, Sophia. You'll find another way. She nodded numbly, but inside she felt like she had lost everything. Sophia felt like she was drowning. The track was gone, the scholarship was gone, the future she had spent years building had been ripped away overnight. But not everyone had left. Emma sat beside her at lunch like she always had. I know this sucks, she said, blunt as ever, but you're not done, Sophia, not even close. Sophia stared at her untouched food. I don't even know who I am without track. Emma nudged her. You're still you. It wasn't just Emma. Mrs. Taylor, her English teacher, pulled her aside after class. You're stronger than you think, Sophia, she said. This doesn't have to be the end. Even Coach Reynolds, despite delivering the worst news of her life, had said the same thing. Maybe they were right, maybe she wasn't done yet. Maybe she just had to find a new way forward. Sophia sat at her desk, staring at the blank document on her laptop. The cursor blinked, waiting. For years, she had written about her speed, her wins, her future on the track. Now, that future no longer existed. But she was still here, still fighting. She took a deep breath and started typing. I was supposed to be a college athlete, a state champion, a girl whose name would be remembered for breaking records, not for breaking expectations. The words poured out, the fear, the judgment, the heartbreak, losing Ethan, losing track, losing herself. I thought my life was over, but then I realized something. I'm not just a runner. I'm not just a statistic. I am still me, and I am still capable of achieving great things. She wrote about resilience, about finding strength in places she never thought to look. This isn't the story I planned for myself, but maybe, just maybe, it's the story I was meant to tell. She reread every word. Then, with a steady breath, she hit send. Now all she could do was wait. Sophia had stopped expecting good news. For weeks, she had avoided checking her email, convincing herself that it didn't matter, that no school would want a pregnant teen with no track career. But one afternoon, as she was stuffing books into her locker, her phone buzzed. A new email from Columbia University. Her heart stopped. Hands shaking, she tapped the screen. The words blurred together for a second before she forced herself to focus. Dear Miss Carter, we have reviewed your application and are pleased to inform you. Her breath caught. You have been awarded an academic scholarship based on your resilience, leadership, and personal achievements. Sophia froze. For a moment, she just stared at the screen, disbelieving. Then, the realization hit all at once. She had done it. Not because she was a track star, not because she could run, because she had fought, because she had refused to quit. Tears spilled over as she clutched the phone to her chest. She wasn't just getting a second chance. She had created one for herself. A year ago, Sophia Carter walked through the halls of Westwood High, feeling ashamed, judged, and broken. Today, she walked back through those same halls as a guest speaker. She stepped onto the stage in the packed auditorium, gripping the microphone. Hundreds of eyes were on her. Students, teachers, even Coach Reynolds. The same people who once whispered behind her back now sat waiting to hear her story. She took a deep breath. A year ago, I thought my life was over. The room was silent. I lost everything I had worked for. My scholarship, my spot on the track team, my future. And for a long time, I believed what people said about me, that I had ruined my life. She looked at the crowd, making sure they felt her words. But I was wrong. My life didn't end. It just changed, and I had to find the strength to change with it. She told them about the pain, the fear, the doubt, about how she fought through it. One mistake doesn't define you. What you do next does. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. This time, they weren't judging her. They were inspired by her. Sophia took a steady breath, looking out at the sea of faces before her. She saw younger girls, full of potential. She saw athletes, students, dreamers, people who needed to hear what she wished someone had told her. She gripped the microphone tighter. We all make mistakes. Her voice was steady, but filled with emotion. But a mistake is not the end of your story. People will judge you. They'll say you've ruined your future, that you'll never recover. I know because I heard it all. She paused, letting her words sink in. But here's what I learned. You have a choice. You can let failure define you, or you can stand up and fight for yourself. The room was silent, hanging on to her every word. I chose to stand up, and because of that, I'm here today. Not as a track star, not as the girl who lost everything, but as someone who proved that no setback is final. She took a deep breath. You can fall, but you can also rise. The choice is yours. The standing ovation came before she even stepped off the stage. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of loyalty, love, and the incredible bonds between humans and animals. Join us as we share stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment.